It's Friday night. It's the preview show. It's the No Nay Never podcast.
Hello and welcome to the preview show, brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Bromley, and joining me as ever is the main man himself, the headliner, the absolute boss, Dave Statman Roberts. Dave, hello.
Hello, Natalie. Good to be back. And you've had an exciting week, haven't you, this week?
I have had an exciting week. Well, it was a kind of non-exciting week because we had Newcastle away, which we'll come on to talk to in a minute, and then it ended very excitedly. But then I was also sad because we missed the preview show last week because of stupid work. And yeah, it's been a bit up and down this week, Dave. But I guess let's start very briefly. I think for those regular listeners will know why we haven't had a podcast this week, so we haven't really talked amongst ourselves about that very important, albeit slightly boring draw away at Newcastle last week. What did you think of the game in the end?
Well, it wasn't. There won't be too much written about it, but the end of the day, we got a point out of it. A point, I think, on an away game is always a good result. And I've looked back on last season, pretty much 12 months ago, wasn't it, when we played up at Newcastle. We didn't have a very good game. They scored 2 first-half goals, and we didn't get anything out of it. So it's certainly an improvement on that from a result perspective. And at the end of the day, it's a good point, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think we were talking about this off air, didn't we, before we came on. I think people are a little bit too quick to turn their noses up at a point. But you've got to attribute a certain value to every point you get in the Premier League. And a point away from home is very, very valuable. I think it's certainly a more impressive result for us than it was with Newcastle. I think they'll be more aggrieved that they didn't manage to get the win. I thought we did look better when Chris Wood came on, albeit I'm kind of pleased that he started with Matty Vidra up front for that game and give him a consistent run in the squad. It was a difficult game, I think, though, for Matty, wasn't it? It didn't quite fall for him in the end, but I was still relatively encouraged by his work rate and his desire to go and get those goals, weren't you?
Yeah, very much so. I think he's the sort of player where I think he'll benefit from having a decent run. I think it's going to be difficult now, isn't it? Chris Wood back to reasonably full fitness. I think he's going to be certainly available for Saturday's game. Ashley Barnes is back in training, but he's not going to be available for Saturday. So it's one of those where we do have the strikers and we're able to have some options now, which is a good thing as well.
Yeah, it really is, and I think we've got different options in terms of styles of play and like physical presence and formations, and when Ashley comes back as well, I think we're just going to be a little bit spoilt for choice. Another clean sheet for Pope, though, of course, puts him in the lead at the moment on the hunt for the Golden Glove Award. That's impressive, isn't it?
It does. He's got 11 now, and I saw the news today that Alisson for Liverpool's out on this weekend as well. So an opportunity to extend that lead. Yeah,
I'm not massively expecting a result. We'll talk about that later on, obviously. So I'm not massively expecting us to get something from. Ooh, where did that noise come from? Dave?
I didn't hear anything.
Did you hear that? No. Did you not hear anything? Listeners, we've got gremlins in the preview show. I was mid-talk then, and the No Nay Never theme tune started playing really loudly in my ear.
Oh.
Okay, listeners, either it's been a harder week than I first thought, or we have gremlins. And I've completely lost my train of thought, Dave, so let's move on a little bit. A little bit of news before we move on to actually preview that Spurs game at home. Clearly, everybody knows that we're in the midst of a coronavirus pandemic. Are we actually calling it a pandemic yet? Or
it's not that. No. We're not panicking yet. We're in the containment phase.
Oh, we're in containment. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. No. We've moved from the containment phase. We're in delaying phase.
Oh, wait, right. Okay.
Today. We're in delaying phase. So we're in the delaying phase of the coronavirus. And Dave, there's been some Premier League news ahead of this weekend's fixtures.
Well, yes, the Premier League have announced that they've banned pre-match handshakes. So where the players and the officials shake hands before the match, they're not going to be doing that now until further notice.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's probably a better option than just playing all the games behind closed doors. But given that these players are going to run around the pitch tackling each other, we know that some players are quite bad at spitting on the pitch or clearing their airways, shall we just say, and there's going to be some physical contact. I'm not entirely sure that banning the handshake's going to work, do you, Dave?
It might be symbolic, might that, I think, more than anything else. I don't know
Yeah.
how much effect that will actually have.
Yeah, well, and I believe you've just put in our show notes, Dave, and I'm not really sure where this is heading, but you see you've got a question for me. This is interesting.
Yeah, the question is, how many current or former footballers have you shaken hands with this week?
Ah, Dave, I like it. Well, funny you should mention that, Dave Roberts, because I shook hands twice with a rather spectacular former footballer of Burnley Football Club this week. And listeners, I am, of course...
Who could that possibly be?
Well, I'm, of course, talking about the scoop of the decade for us. No one and ever were invited to go and interview Burnley legend Ian Wright on Monday. Essentially, just to talk about his time at the club. Valentine's Day this year was, of course, the 20th anniversary since he joined Clarets Under Stans and got Stans' side promotion to the Championship, which I believe was behind Preston and with Wigan in the playoffs, if I remember rightly. And it was just absolutely spectacular. It was an utter joy. The man is a very lovely individual, and he's got quite an interesting balance from being an unbelievable superstar. I've just found myself sat across from him just thinking, you're Ian Wright. You literally are Ian Wright, and this is crazy.
Pinch yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. But then at the same time, I felt like I was sat on the sofa having a chat with like my next door neighbour. He's so ridiculously down to earth. But I think my main takeaway from it, Dave, was the specificity with which he talked. I didn't know how much he would remember of his time, whether it was just the end of his career, whether it was a particularly defining moment in his career, or, whether he would have really good stories to tell. And he remembers in great detail, and the stories that he told, he remembers goals, games, clubs, incidents, Stan's Friday Court. He remembers so much, and the enthusiasm with which he talked and the details that he provided left me absolutely with no doubt that he genuinely loved his time at Burnley, and he looks back fondly on it. So guys, if you've not checked it out yet, do go and listen, please. It is an absolutely fantastic interview and just gave me all the nostalgia feels that you can. So I guess question straight back at you then, Dave. Have you shaken hands with any former or past players this week?
Well, no, I can go one better than that. I shook hands with a current player. I was doing the commentary with Phil Bird for the FA Youth Cup match that was on Wednesday evening over at Manchester City, and we're there set up. We went on air about 5-10 minutes before kick-off, and who should walk in front of us but current Burnley captain Ben Mee. Who, of course, he was the winning captain in 2008, so 12 years ago. He was at Manchester City, and he was the winning captain.
Goodness me! Well, that was exciting. You always have to go on better than me, Dave, just because it's your show. Well, that's it. But did you actually shake hands, or did you have to do the elbow shake?
No. We shook hands with Phil, shook hands with me, and then Phil had a chat with him for a couple of minutes before the match kicked off. It was good to have his insight before the game for Claret's player listeners.
Oh, excellent. He's a nice guy, Ben Mee. I've got such a lot of time for him. He's just an absolute sweetheart. That said, listeners, if Ben Mee is absent from tomorrow's game and is suddenly mysteriously in quarantine, then we know full well that Dave Statman Roberts is in fact patient zero.
No, I've got very good hand hygiene here.
Yes, I have. I've got to say, I've got good hand hygiene anyway, but I'm starting to get tiny little blisters on my hands because I'm just this 20-second rule, and every single time you touch something, it's quite burdensome. Anyway, Dave, let's move on. Before we go to look at the Spurs game, we have 2 quiz questions to look at. Now, we'll go a couple of weeks back ahead of our Bournemouth preview show, where that question, I'd forgotten all about this actually, was: Burnley and Bournemouth played out a 0-0 draw at Turf Moor in April 1996. but after keeper Wayne Russell was sent off for a professional foul in the 76th minute, which outfield player took the gloves and saw the resultant spot kick, strike, a post, and rebound to safety? Those words were in a very jumbled order on my screen, I'm sorry. What was the answer to that one, young Dave?
The correct answer was David Ayres. He took the gloves. He didn't save the penalty, but he saw the penalty at the post and go away, and he also kept a clean sheet for the remaining 13 minutes, whatever was left, and it was a 0-0 draw. So that was a job done with 10 men.
Excellent, good on you. Ooh, David Ayres. Ooh, David Ayres. Remember that song? I do like it when I get an opportunity on the preview show. I don't really get this on the main show. It's very serious, is the main podcast, but we like to have a little bit of a laugh, don't we, on the preview show, Dave, and I get to have a bit of a sing-song. Any correct answers then to the David Ayres question?
We had quite a few, yeah. We had correct answers from John Robertson, Rob Thomas, Man Bong Pang on Facebook, Ben BFC, Hearts Clarets, Jim Barry, and Todd Claret as well. They all got the correct answer. They knew that it was David Ayres.
Excellent. Well done, them men. Second question, which was obviously the one that we had to post last week via our social media channels. This was prior to the Newcastle game. And the question Dave asked was, who had scored the most goals for Burnley since Sean Dyche took over as manager? I think I know who this is. Who was it, Dave? What was the answer?
What do you think it was?
Sam Vokes.
Correct, yes.
Yes!
The reason why this question came in was it was actually a milestone with the previous match. I think the Bournemouth game. I think the first goal in that game was the 400th goal that Burnley had scored under Sean Dyche since he took over.
Oh, wow.
So we'd also scored the 401st and 402nd, but we got the 400 milestone, so I thought it'd be interesting to look back and see which players had scored the most. Sam Vokes, as you correctly knew, he was top with 62, but I'd also asked for a bonus question as well, which other players had scored 30 or more goals in that time.
Okay. And who were those players?
Well, in order, behind Sam Vokes, Ashley Barnes scored 43, Danny Ings with 40, Chris Wood with 34, and Andre Gray with 33.
Wow. I've got to say, there's quite a big difference between Vokesy on 62 and Barnes on 43.
Well, yeah, he had a year or two head start as well, didn't he? So
Yeah.
That's helpful.
That's true. And I've got to say, I would have, if I was answering this last week, I would have put Barnes and Ings the other way around. If you'd have said to me, one's on 43, one's on 40, I'd have put Danny on 43. But he's done well as Ashley, hasn't he?
He has, very much so.
Considering he came to us in that panic moment when we were trying to get promoted in 2014, he came from lower division. We didn't think he was up to the championship at the time. Given for him to go on and score that many goals, I do love him. It's amazing. So who got correct answers for that question?
Well, we only had the one that got them all right. So we had Jacob Sapwell. He'd been in touch. He knew that Sam Vokes was the top scorer, and he also got all four of the other names. John Robertson also knew that Sam Vokes was the top scorer, and he came really close in his attempt to name all the other players, but just missed out at the end. But never mind.
John Robertson. That is a B- for you this week. You're gonna have to up your game next week. We've got a new pretender to your crown. Is that the right phrase, pretender?
Yes.
Yeah, Jacob Sapwell's going to be taking over as number one fan, John Robertson. If you don't, and actually, there's quite a few actually who probably take the crown of number one fan, but I do like to tease John Robertson because he's a gem. Right, okay, so stay tuned, guys, because obviously those are two quiz questions that we've caught up on. But as ever, we are going to be setting another question for you at the end of this show.
Opposition stats.
So moving swiftly on, Dave, we have the small matter of a game to preview, which is kind of why we're here. We get sidetracked a bit, don't we, with other fun things, but we do have to look at a game, and we are back at Turf Moor this weekend for a home tie against Tottenham Hotspur. Saturday the 7th of March at a 5:30 kickoff. We are live on Sky Sports at the weekend. Dave, why don't you kick us off and tell us what's happened since we last met?
Yes, a bit of background on that. Obviously, Burnley suffered a heavy 5-0 defeat on our first ever visit to the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. That was back in December. That was just a couple of weeks after new manager Jose Mourinho had taken over from Mauricio Pochettino. And following that defeat, Burnley were in 13th place on 18 points, and Spurs were in 6th place. They were 5 points ahead of us on 23 points. But that gap has closed in recent weeks. and a home win for Burnley this Saturday would take the Clarets ahead of Spurs, who are currently just 2 points ahead of us on 40.
Excellent. So let's have a look at some specific stats then, Dave. What's the heaviest Burnley defeat at Turf Moor?
Well, Spurs have come away from Turf Moor with a victory by a margin of 3 goals on 3 separate occasions, as well as a 4-1 win they had in a First Division match. That's going way back in February 1924. Spurs have been victors by 3-0 twice. So in addition to a 3-0 League Cup win in November 2004, the scoreline was the same, 3-0, just before Christmas 2017. That was a Premier League meeting, and in that game, Harry Kane scored a hat-trick.
Excellent. And what about well, an excellent stat, not an excellent result, obviously. And there was an element of sarcasm in there. What about the biggest Burnley win then at Turf Moor?
We can go a little bit better than that. In terms of big Burnley wins, the Clarets have beaten Spurs at Turf Moor by a 5-goal margin twice. There was a 5-0 win that not many people will remember. That's going back to November 1926 and included a George Beale hat-trick. And in April 1964, the goals were shared out a little bit more evenly in a 7-2 win. Gordon Harris, Brian O'Neill and Willie Irvin each scored a brace, with Andy Lockhead scoring the other goal.
Excellent. What about Burnley's last win then? Can we perhaps combine that with last season's meeting by any chance?
Yes, we've done this once or twice this season. That's the same again. We can combine both questions with a single answer. So we did pull off an impressive home victory last season when the teams met at Turf Moor, and that was in February, just over 12 months ago. After a goalless first half, Chris Wood gave Burnley the lead. He nodded home a Dwight McNeil corner. But Spurs hit back, if you remember, with a controversial goal. The ball went out of play and the fourth official was very quick off the mark, retrieving it for a Spurs throw near the halfway line, stole a few yards, and it was Harry Kane, that man again, who went on to net the equaliser. But it wasn't lost. Ashley Barnes scored the winning goal in the 83rd minute to seal the victory and 3 valuable points.
Oh, I've forgotten all about that. I was outraged at the time.
And then
I remember it was
Poch went mad at the end, didn't he, if you remember?
Yeah, he did. But yeah, we'll just replace Poch for Jose, and we expect the same thing to happen this week. Okay, let's have a look at some head-to-head stats then, please, Dave.
Yeah, well, we've faced Spurs in a total of 116 matches. That's at all venues. But as usual, we'll focus on our past home games. So our overall home record against Spurs stands at played 55. We've won 29 of those, drawn 16 and lost 10. That gives us a win percentage of 52.7%, which is slightly better than our overall home average win percentage against all the other teams in the division, and that stands at almost exactly 50%. When we look at top flight home matches only, we've played 39 times at Turf Moor. We've won 20, drawn 11 and lost 8, giving us a similar win percentage. That's 51.3%. When we look at Premier League games only, we've played Spurs 5 times since 2009. Burnley have won twice, drawn once, and lost twice.
Oh, excellent. We'll have to see what happens after this weekend, Dave. I think that's some funny stats in the middle of there, but also some good stats, I think. Talking to the game itself then, Dave, who's the man in the middle? Who's going to be refereeing the game?
We've got John Moss. He's been given the job of refereeing this Saturday evening's match at Turf Moor. He's already taken charge of 2 of our away matches so far this season. He was there for the defeat at Leicester City with that controversial, non-goal, Chris Wood's goal being disallowed, but that was the video assistant who ruled that one out and denied us a point. And he was also there for our victory against Manchester United at Old Trafford. And it's Craig Pawson's turn to be the VAR this week. Interestingly, with us being the evening kickoff for TV, he hasn't been put on VAR duties for the lunchtime kickoff, which has happened quite a few times this season. I think maybe they've got wise to that now, and if there's controversy in the early game, they don't really want to have them in the late game as well. So he's just doing our game by the looks of it, and not any other.
Oh, that's interesting. So often they do more than one game. I suppose that makes sense, doesn't it? Because they're in the studio, so they have to do all of the fixtures.
Previously they had, but I think controversy has put an end to that.
Controversy and VAR. Surely the 2 words are not going in the same sentence.
Celebrity fans!
Finally then, our new feature for the second half of this season. Who are Tottenham Hotspur's celebrity fans?
Yeah, well, here's the name of just 7 of Spurs' famous fans, which we've picked out to mention. Lord Alan Sugar, actor Jude Law, comedian Michael McIntyre, singer Lamar, actor Kenneth Branagh, DJ Simon Mayo, and actress Patsy Kensit.
What a wonderfully diverse selection of celebrity fans, Dave.
And I do go on and check. If you think I don't research the show, I do go on and check. And for the majority of them, there are either tweets from them or even pictures. I've seen pictures of Michael McIntyre there with a Tottenham lanyard on and with fans, and Lamar on the pitch, and Patsy Kensit tweeting her support for Tottenham as well. And obviously Alan Sugar, he's always going on about Spurs, isn't he? So yeah, they seem to have people who are vocal about it, but whether any of them will be there at Turf Moor this weekend, either in the cricket field stand or in the posh seats, we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, we will. Just to clarify a quick point, Dave, there's absolutely nobody in the world who thinks you don't research before the show.
Statman Dave's Stat of the Week.
Well, let's not end there, because I know you and I know how much you like to spoil our listeners. So why don't you delve deep into the banks of Dave and let us have your miscellaneous stat of the week.
Yeah, well, this week's Stat of the Week is regarding the opposition manager. Jose Mourinho is now in charge of his 3rd different Premier League club. And although Sean Dyche has been in charge for Burnley wins against all of Chelsea, Manchester United and Spurs over the years, he's yet to see a Burnley win in any of the 8 previous meetings where Jose has been in charge at any of these clubs. So far, he's been involved in 8 matches, 2 against Chelsea, 5 against Man United and 1 against Spurs earlier this season, which have ended as, from a Burnley perspective, 3 draws and 5 defeats. So we're hoping Sean Dyche can make it 9th time lucky with a win over Jose this Saturday.
Indeed, that famous lucky number 9, 9th time lucky. So how are you feeling? How are you feeling about the weekend, Dave? I'm going to set this little feature out off the block straight away. I cannot see anything other than a Burnley win at the weekend.
Very confident, aren't you?
Very, very confident. They are in absolute... Did you see the nonsense in the press this week where Jose's told his board that they have to choose which game he has to prioritise, us at the weekend or the Champions League game midweek?
I did see that, yes.
Yeah, that is a bold stance for a manager who's already under pressure after a very short period of time.
Or maybe it's just deflection. He's trying to take a bit of the pressure off. That might be another thing. He's an expert in that. I did actually see they posted a few clips from the press conference. Obviously, do the pre-match press conferences, and he was actually very complimentary about Burnley and Sean Dyche. Obviously, saying that Burnley was a tough place to go to, and obviously other teams have come away with nothing. So again, it might be a case of trying to get his excuses in first, but I'm maybe of a different mind to you. I'm kind of thinking, well, maybe the expectation levels are going too far the other way. So there's an expectation that's now too high in terms of Burnley fans as to what we're going to do on Saturday. Obviously, I think we can win, and I hope we do win. But I think just the back of my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, is Jose going to come and park the bus, and is he going to play for a draw? Is he going to try and get a dodgy win on the break or what? So I think we just have to be a little bit wary. I think there's still a tough side to play against. They are missing striking options, but it won't be an easy game on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be an easy game in that they're obviously one of the top 6, 7 sides for a reason, but they're not playing very well, and they are struggling to score goals. And if you look at the I guess the form going into both of these sides, we are riding high on confidence, and we're very well drilled, and we're very organised, and we know exactly what we want to do, and they're all over the place. I mean, I understand your caution, and I know you can be a very cautious fan at times, Dave, but I don't see anything wrong with being overly optimistic or having high expectations. I don't think it's about time we did as Burnley. I guess what I'm getting at is we seem to spend a significant amount of time just being cautious and saying, we've just got to be grateful for what we got to. Remember Orient, and let's not forget where we've come from. And I think sometimes when we are in the safe position that we are, and we are doing as well as we are in the second half of the season, just embrace it and allow yourself to have a bit of an ego. I'm going to take it on for both of us, Dave, and I'm going to be overly optimistic. You can stay cautious. I'll do it for both of us.
That's fair.
Excellent. Quick score prediction then?
I'm going to go for a draw. I think it'll be 1-1.
Oh, you're so, honestly, live a little, Dave. I'm going to go for a Burnley win, 2-0. There you go. Who are you going to start up front? If Wood's fit, do you bring him straight in, or do you stick with Matty and Jay?
I think he might be tempted to bring Woody back in. I think it might be Woody and Jay.
You really feel for Vidra, though, if he does that, don't you? It's very tough. Very tough. But I expect, though, even if he starts with Woody, we'll see Vidra at some point.
He might start with Woody and Vidra.
No way can you drop Jay at the moment. No way. If he does that, I'm walking to the bobble stand to that dugout. I'm going to go, oi, mister, what are you doing? Yeah, no, I think out of the 4 strikers, even if Ashley was fit, I think Jay actually starts every game at the moment. I think he's playing fantastically well. Well, let's see then. There you go. Listeners, why don't you let us know briefly what your score predictions are? You know how to get in touch. Tweet us at No Nay Never.
Fantasy Premier League update.
Okay, let's finish this week's show with a look at the Fantasy Premier League, the much-loved, highly competitive and much coveted title of our Fantasy Premier League, which is a feature I love so much. I love this competition. I haven't missed this.
Do you say love or loathe?
Love. Love. Read into that what you will, Dave Roberts. I haven't missed this in 2 weeks, but I suppose we're going to have to, yay, champion. And actually, I genuinely am very delighted for the guys who are doing well and the girls who are doing well at the top of our league. I don't like the bit where we talk about where I am. So go on, Dave, kick us off. Who are the movers and shakers in our league?
Well, it was quite a low-scoring week last week. Several teams weren't playing, and there were 1 or 2 surprise results as well. Bennett Howarth remains at the top of the No Nay Never Fantasy League. Moving up to second place is Tall Paul, which means that John Sutcliffe slips back into third. We've got 10 rounds of matches still to play, so we're bound to see even more fierce competition for places at the very top of the table. But we did see a change at the top of the mini-league for the No Nay Never team last week.
Am I now in the lead?
No. George Poole overtook Richard Steele.
No.
Yes.
Ooh, I'm going to go and stalk the fire when I get him that. Ooh. That's. I thought I would be in the lead by now.
Well, we've got an update on that if you like.
No, I don't really know. Quick mention, actually. Don't forget, Tall Paul. I know you're listening. I think we did say a couple of weeks ago before the Bournemouth game to get in touch because you're some kind of fantasy football genius and I want to get you on the show. So don't forget, drop me a line and then we can sort that out before the end of the season. Sorry, please do carry on, Dave.
And for anyone who's still interested, my Burnley Stats team moved up another 8 places to 118th, so improving slightly. And your Dingle Bells team, Natalie, dropped back another place, so you're back down to 163rd out of 164 now.
Hang on a minute, you're in 118th?
Yes.
Like for most of this season, you were only about a couple of places above me. What?
No, I've been well above you. Comfortably above.
Well, I'm not last. Let's look at that anyway. I refuse to finish the season last. What about the Dream Team update then, please?
Well, there weren't any Burnley players in the Game Week 28 Dream Team, although Nick Pope only just missed out by 1 point. I think he scored 10 with his bonus points. I think the goalkeeper, I can't remember who it was who was in there, but got 11 points. But he stretched his lead as Nick Pope as the highest-scoring Burnley player, as well as the highest-scoring goalkeeper overall. And there was also an interesting tweet since our last update from the official Fantasy Premier League. They confirmed that Nick Pope is now the best value player in any position. So that's looking at points per million. So looking at the transfer fee value and the number of points they've earned, Nick Pope is the best value player in any position across the whole league.
Wow, Nick Pope's just smashing it this season on every single front. Good lad. Oh, actually, that's a quick thing. Producer Matt was doing this today, so I need to remember this. We have tweeted out from the None and Ever account the nominations for the Barclays Manager of the Month and Player of the Month, and Dyche and Nick Pope are both in there. So
we've got a clean sweep. There's 4. There's young player Dwight McNeil, player, goal, and manager. So there's 4 different ones to vote for, and they're all really easy to do. You go on there, you click a button, you don't have to register, you don't have to put an email address in. It's really easy to do. So I think we have tweeted the links out from the No Nay Never account, and we'll probably retweet those again. But follow the links and get your votes in.
Excellent. Who got the goal? Was it Mate, I presume?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. His first one.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Although, to be fair, the second one he scored, you could probably argue that was a decent one as well. But good for him. Oh, would it be ace if we got all four? There's no way that the football gods are going to let us do all four, is there?
Well, the problem is it's done on votes, so obviously I think the obviously bigger fan bases for the other sides is probably going to go in their favour, unless all the other teams vote against them and come on our side. So maybe it needs a social media campaign to try
Maybe
and
it
up the
does.
vote.
I don't think Burnley are that popular, to be honest. People don't tend to. They probably out of spite would just vote against us for no reason. Well, we'll give you another Fantasy Premier League update in our next preview show as we get ever closer to finding out who will win this season's No Nay Never League, along with the prestige that it brings, although there is no prize. And do not rule out a late surge from Natalie Bromley's Dingle Bells to take that first prize.
Statman Dave's quiz question.
And finally, Dave, let's leave our listeners with the quiz question. Hit us with it, please.
Okay, yeah, we've got a question here, which is not really related to Spurs, but we're going to reference it. Burnley have only beaten Spurs in a Premier League match at Turf Moor once during Sean Dyche's time as manager. We did beat them once before that. But which four teams have Burnley already chalked up 3 home Premier League wins against since Sean Dyche took over in 2012? 4 teams that we've had 3 wins against at Turf Moor since Sean Dyche took over as manager in 2012. Can you get all four?
Just in the Premier League or in any league?
Just in the Premier League.
So let me just clarify this because I'm not sure I'm getting this. So there are 4 teams that Burnley have beaten in the Premier League at home 3 times.
3 times, yes.
Just 3 times or more than 3 times?
Just 3 times.
Just 3 times. Right, I can think of one. I'm not sure the other 2 would be, but I'll have a think. Excellent.
There's 4.
Oh yeah, no, of course, 4. I can definitely think of one. I'll have to think of the other 3. My maths aren't great tonight. Dave, let's move swiftly on. Tell our listeners how they get in touch with their answers, please.
Yeah, the best ways to get in touch, you can send us a direct message on Twitter. That's at NoNayNever. Send us an email, podcast@nonaynever.net. Or you can also reply on the post which we'll put up for this preview show on the No Nay Never Facebook page, and we'll reveal the correct answer, hopefully, at the start of the next preview show.
Yeah, I think I would add to that. You can also you can actually just tweet us. You don't need to send us a direct message. I think mainly just because not always if you don't follow us or you send it, or sometimes it goes into our holding bank and I don't see it. So you can just tweet us. But yes, do send us a message as well, and we will reveal the correct answer at the start of the next preview show. Exciting times. Get your thinking caps on. That's all we've got time for this week. It's been a lovely, warm, fuzzy preview show as we count down to a fantastic 3 points at home to Spurs this weekend, a thrilling win, and we all get to laugh at Jose's sulking. My thanks, as ever, go to producer Matt for putting all of this together and getting it out there, especially as we're a little late recording this week, so he's having to give up his Friday night to get this out, so thank you very much, Matt. My thanks mainly obviously to the main man himself, our absolute superstar Dave Statman Roberts, who puts in an extraordinary amount of effort into this podcast, and I enjoy it immensely, so thank you, Dave. It's always a pleasure. But finally, my thanks go to you, the listener, for downloading and listening to this week's podcast. We wouldn't be here without you, so thanks very much. Godspeed to all Clarets making the journey to Turf Moor tomorrow. Get your singing voices all warmed up. Let's shout those boys on to victory and bring home those 3 points. This has been the preview show brought to you by the No Nay Never podcast. Until next time.